how far or how deep that line is. Any other questions?
Puneet, we have a question from the audience. What's the scope for biofuels in India? There's somebody from the audience not mentioned. Diljit. Scope of biofuels in India.
Could that person stand up, Diljit? Yeah. Rahul, you want to take that on? And then I'll ask you.
Yeah. So all the technologies that are coming up, whether it's biofuels, and recently I saw a technology which is alternate coal. I don't know if you've heard about it. So it's not actually coal, it's something else. It's advanced engineering through which they have developed a material which doesn't pollute the environment. On the whole, all of such things have a huge market in the coming days, whether it's the hydrogen cell or it's biofuels or it's alternate coal. And let me tell you again, because we're discussing about the government a lot, if you know amazing cars like Prius from Toyota, all of them have 100% duty right now. So from the government angle, yes, it's going to be a trouble for some while, but otherwise I believe the future is really bright.
There, considering you had experience on a recent biofuels project.
Yeah, I feel that rather than asking what the scope is, you should focus on what your model is, right? Because the scope is there. Like there is a big void in the market for almost everything. India is developing right now, so anything with a good model will do well. The question is how good is your model? That is what you should focus on, I feel.
Jackie, any thoughts and comments?
No, again, as she said that it's about the model that they have, like there are people in Jalandhar who have started making electric cars on golf cart chassis. So now they have started making those cars look better and better so that people start shifting from regular cars to electric cars. Again, it's about value. If you make something crude and which doesn't work, obviously nobody is going to be buying it. But if it's something which is well made and which is well designed and again gives value to people, they're going to be taking it. Biofuels obviously has a huge demand because India is short on energy, as we have been talking repeatedly. But how will you make those biofuels and what is your entire model of kind of putting the logistics in place? That's where the challenge is.
Recently, there have been a number of startups. If you read the business press, last 2-3 years, you've had a number of startups who have been excessively funded in the biofuels area. Now, there are two questions on biofuels. One is the investor exuberance on the size of the biofuels market. Investors are by and large extremely exuberant on the biofuels market. But these 2-3 startups that have been valued like in the billions of dollars have failed to deliver on that promise because executing on the ground microgrids based out of biofuels is one of the most difficult things in India. चोरी हो जाती है, लोग तार काट के ले जाते हैं, आपको डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन अरेंजमेंट नहीं मिलता है, कलेक्शन ऑफ the fuel itself is a painful task. The cost associated with managing your subscale venture in a village is an issue. I think all sectors in the biofuels area are hot as long as you learn the basic economics of that. And business is about economics. Any other questions?
You can answer.
Go about it.
Could you say that again?
I wish to get into fashion media. How do I go about it?
Fashion media.
Yes.
Okay. So getting into fashion media obviously would require that you have certain skills in terms of fashion reporting. But until and unless you get into fashion media, how are you going to have those skills in fashion reporting? So it turns into a chicken and egg situation mostly for these kind of requirements, in the sense that when you want to be specifically in a certain area, you got to have skills for it even to make it into that area. But you would put this question to me that if I don't make it into that area, how would I have the skills for it? Isn't it? So the point is that you have to at least show some potential in terms of being a fashion reporter. How would you show that potential? As in the beginning we said right away that today the opportunities are much more diverse and available. So what you do is you start you should have a flair for it. Obviously, you have a flair for it. You have a passion for fashion reporting. You have it, isn't it? I will assume that. So what you would do is you would go through all news sources that you have, put in original writing on a blog post, and start building following on that blog post to show that you're passionate about it. So that when you go for an interview and they ask you why should we hire you as a fashion reporter, you can say at least take a look at my work, what I have done. And if you see that for the last 4 years you've been blogging regularly on it, day after day, and there are 50,000 followers on Facebook and on Twitter for your kind of posting, obviously you're absolutely you're going to get a job right away. So those are the things you got to do, and you got to show that you are capable of original writing. Now, a big name like Fareed Zakaria, who was with CNN and with our kind of parent company CNN and Time Magazine, now he's had to step down because he plagiarized just 3 lines from somebody else's article, something which was not his own words. He took it from somebody else and didn't attribute them. So there is a huge premium on original writing, your own stuff. So if you can show that, if you can prove it, you've got a job there for you. And probably you won't need the job. You would be making so much money as a famous blogger that you wouldn't need the job. There are people in India who are such famous bloggers that they don't need the jobs in some fashion magazine or any fashion house. The fashion magazines' houses run after them. They get to travel all over the world. Everybody is calling them. All the Paris and fashion designers are calling them everywhere. So the opportunities are immense.
There's one more question coming from Jati.
Because I personally didn't choose one for myself. I think that the general rule is that you choose a person that complements your skills. So, if you bring something called A to the table, the person has to be bringing something called B to the table. I think that's what I would say. Apart from that, I think it's just the passion for whatever you're doing. Both the founders need to share the same passion to build something, to make a difference, or whatever you want to do, whatever you want to change.
And if I may just add on to that, a lot of people talk about co-founders bringing early team members together, especially if one guy has the idea, someone else joins in as a co-founder. You got to understand that this is like a marriage or a relationship. There is give and take. Number 2, each person brings something specific into the project or company. Number 3, there has to be significant alignment of vision. You will see ups and downs. Typically, when you are having an up and there is money coming in, it's easy to get alignment of vision, because that alignment of vision is around money. And anyone who's done a business before will tell you that there will come a down cycle. And once that down cycle comes in, having alignment of vision at that time requires a strength of character. And another thing you have to have is a high degree of maturity. You can have a conversation. If you cannot sit down with your co-founder and have the most difficult of conversations, you have a problem at hand. Anybody else wants to ask?
We are from GEC, right? I have no clues about mobile apps, though I see it as a big opportunity. How shall I proceed?
This one's right for Sameer, who's built a lot of mobile apps.
So you're saying you want to build a mobile app, but do not know how to proceed?
Yes.
Okay. So I think so there are 2 ways to answer that question basically. If you have an idea that's unique, you need to think about building that. Or if there's an idea that's already been done, then maybe trying to improve on that, simplifying it, making it better. So the first step obviously is to choose what is it that you want to do. The second thing in technical terms would be, which platform do you want to build it for? Do you want to build it for iOS, iPad, or an iPhone, or Android, or BlackBerry, or whatever? And there's also a cross-platform technology, which is HTML5, that lets you build on those platforms. So you need to decide which one you want to go with. So overriding all of this is something called, that we follow, is something called lean methodology, which basically means that do not try and do too much. Think of breaking it down into small parts and only trying to achieve the smaller parts first. This methodology, there's a guy called Eric Ries who's written about it. Maybe you should try and read on that. But similar methodology is called getting real. So basically not trying to do too much, trying to do little, identifying, and then trying to build on that idea, reducing the scope as you go on, because money is limited. So once you've done that, then obviously finding a developer, whether you want to build it yourself, there are 13, 14, 15-year-old kids that are building it. There are tools online, app generators that you could use to build an app, and then launching it in the marketplace. I think those are the steps that I would take.
Anyone else wants to add on?
Vulnerability in Yahoo. Now I want to approach them, but there are chances that they can even sue me for saying that I must have misused it or sold it to any in the black market or anything. How can I avoid that type of service?
If you found a vulnerability, you kind of get in touch with them. Obviously, they will immediately detect the issue for having found a vulnerability. Provided they can find found a vulnerability, suppose, in which kind of went into privacy data, and then you kind of entered that area, because there could be logs that could be generated of all activity that you do, and there was any kind of interference or tampering with the data, then obviously you have to. So when you have to decide how did you find the vulnerability and actually take it out, and how soon did you approach them, and why did you approach them in the first place, expecting what? What did you expect when you approached them? Did you expect that they would hire you to sort out the problem? Do you know how to sort it out? Are you just simply warning them that there is a problem with your system? So that's the call that you got to take, but if you do it, then it will not work.
Actually, there's a well-known hacker in America, Adrian Lemon. He didn't approach them specifically. He just told them in general that you have these type of vulnerabilities. He has been sued for many cases. He has around 16 cases going on him.
Before you approach them, because it really depends on what you've hacked into. Every company has levels of database that they would not like, they wouldn't want anybody to interfere with. So it depends on what exactly you've hacked.
And there is a second approach that companies take, is that if they kind of immediately sue somebody like you who made an attempt at trying to point out a vulnerability, they also discourage others from pointing out vulnerabilities which might bring down the stock of the company. If there are too many vulnerabilities, everybody starts pointing out all kinds of problems. So there are various ways that businesses operate in. Business is to some extent like war. So those are the strategies that are adopted there. So as she says, you need kind of legal backup.
If I may also add, you also got to decide, do you want to profit from this? There are a whole bunch of companies that make money by identifying vulnerability. Okay, be a security vulnerability, be it a vulnerability related to software consistency or whatever. So there are a whole bunch of companies that profit from it. So there's one way to look at it, and if you decide to do that, then you have to have means to go do that. Second is, you do not want to profit from it, but you want to be recognized as the school dude guy who solves complex issues. There are a whole bunch of people who do not profit from it, but they build a huge brand name for themselves. Okay. In that case, you should be very close to a lot of foundations that will protect you should shit happen. Okay. The third way that you want to identify is that you don't want to profit from it and you don't want to build a brand name, but you are in it because you are this geek. Okay. And that's a third strategy to deal with it. Either talk to Shreya offline or whatever, but once you figure out which of the three buckets you are after, then make your call.
But read these two top.
What has been the basic experience with you for politics? I am asking for the politics, not the government. So I want to ask you, what is your experience with the politics and the politicians? That's my question.
Okay, if I may answer that, if you decide to join a company, and if you decide to join a large company, the common saying is that large companies' biggest threat is not external but internal. And by internal you mean internal politics, fiefdoms, hierarchy, and also a culture where if you fail, you are out. Okay. At a personal level, if you ask me, as an entrepreneur, you are away from your organizational politics that exist within my own venture. In terms of dealing with politicians, I have limited experience in my business. Certainly, as president of TiE, I have run into politicians in that role. And as a catalyst of the entrepreneurial ecosystem, our interests have been aligned with politicians, fortunately.
Because at the end of the day, a lot of funding for political activities happens through industrialists and through businesses and through such kind of stuff. So that's where that, basically I'm trying to figure out what exactly is your concern, that politicians will come and demand hasta from you, or they'll start kind of interfering with your work, or you're looking to kind of cozy up to a politician and use his kind of clout to push you up. Why would you want to get involved with politics? Politicians will get involved with you when you're big. Okay, they won't get involved with you when you're like small or middle level. Eventually they'll get involved with you, but not at that level. What is your concern?
So my concern is basically that when a person starts, when he or she wants to be big, then he or she definitely will have to provide more jobs to more individuals. And basically when it comes to politics, the right way is that a person should get onto a politician and ask him that I am going to provide jobs. For example, we can say in 2014 the elections are going to happen. The election for Lok Sabha and especially in Haryana the elections for Vidhan Sabha are going to happen. Then I think basically a person who wants to earn big.
I would like to cut you off here itself, because in life talk doesn't work mostly. Yes. It's only things that you do. As somebody was saying that if I have an idea, what should I do? Ideas, everybody has ideas. The whole world is full of ideas. I have a million ideas in my mind about how to set the world right. But that's not going to do anything. It's basically what you do. So once you demonstrate that you can create the jobs, then you can talk about these things. But to start imagining in advance that once I create the jobs, then what would I do, then what would I do? It would be like a story of a guy who wanted a hammer from somebody and he started imagining that that guy is going to say, I will not give you a tool and my car is broken down outside, but he's not going to give me the tool. I will tell him, no, you have to give me, but he will still tell me. So finally when he opened the door, he started shouting, I don't want your tool, you keep it for yourself. So that is like over-imagining things. Okay, so first get down with this small concrete goal in front of you. Start seeing how that's implemented. And as I said that you have all the time in the world. As you make your mistakes, you will learn all these things. These things cannot be taught. How to deal with a politician, how can it be taught? You will learn it on your own, provided you are in a situation to learn it. So get into the situations. That's the objective of this entire talk. That get into the situations first. And then see how things are shaping up. Get into the situations. Thank you so much. So I have seen many of these Sangha Darshans. So Sangha Darshan is purely an exercise in publicity. It's just a politician's way of showing that I am reaching out to people, but he's not interested in reaching out to people. But he wants to show that I am reaching out to people. So you can imagine the hypocrisy that would be there in that situation, where somebody is pretending to reach out but is not really reaching out. Yep. And that's what happens in most of these cases. He will simply go on saying, note down the point, yes, note down the point, note down the point, you get in touch with these guys later on. And once you get in touch with them later on, again, the same circle of bureaucracy. Unless there is, just before elections, there is a deliberate attempt at trying to sort through problems and solve problems. That happens just before elections. After that, again, it's back to square one. That's all.
Let's finish up your question. Thank you.
I basically have a point. I want to tell you that I personally, 3 months ago, I went, my father was owning a business of stone pressures. I went there and a person who was around, I think 60 or 70 was his age, he came to me and he said basically, what he said was that, Kya Balaji are you his grandson? Yes, I said yes. He said, the words, I cannot forget his words, he said that, he was not a politician, he was a Sharif army. So basically, when we see to it that politics has been changed, people think that politics is the thing that is happening in our country due to corruption and all. But basically it is that it's a ruthless money making mind.
Are still working, who want to jump into business.
See, there's no one right or wrong answer. I think at the end of the day, you've got to come down to one question, and that question is your risk appetite. Business on one side is going to be uncertain. Family seeks stability. And if you can provide for that stability in an uncertain time, you can jump at it quicker. If you think you cannot provide stability to the family that they seek, in terms of means, in terms of, then you may want to consider doing your venture full time and having a consulting assignment so that you make it up. In the first case, you may just go living off your savings. In the second case, you can do consulting. Third is, if you think that the idea that you have is going to, it has a long gestation cycle, you would like to do it, but the family and your need is for tremendous stability, then my suggestion is don't do business. A lot of people are conflicted with the need of being independent, with the need of making more money, with being overly obsessed with the fact that doing business on your own means that you would be essentially planting a money tree in your house, which is not the case. Statistics will tell you otherwise. And the need for stability. Even Tata's went through a very unstable time after the JLR buyout. Business and a career in business and a career in entrepreneurship is inherently one in which everything is uncertain.